Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Season 1, Episode 4 of the Dozer Tactical Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Mendoza, and thanks for tuning in. Unfortunately, due to many issues with the ongoing COVID-19 virus and the high demand it has on our heroic first responders, military, and other essential career fields, I will not be joined today by a special guest. So thank you to all of our frontline workers for all the hard work that you do for us. For this podcast, we talk about recent news articles, first-hand experiences, preparedness tips, and tactics for everyday disasters and emergencies. Any articles, gear, and training courses discussed in this episode will be provided with links in the episode description. Please leave us a review and let others know what your thoughts were about this podcast. Since last week's episode, we received 6 ratings in total, resulting in a 4.3 star rating on the iTunes Store. Thank you to our supporters who have provided feedback. Also, consider supporting the podcast by clicking on the support link in the show description. You can find us now on over 10 different podcast platforms, so if you enjoy this podcast, please share us on your social media pages. Today, listeners, our topic of conversation is going to be about the career field of security and what you can do to become a true security professional. I will provide an overview of the security career field, discuss the various jobs and tasks you can perform in security, and finally some tips, tactics, and advice on how to become one of the most professional and competitive security specialists out in the field. So sit back, get comfortable, and prepare for another exciting episode of the Dozer Tactical Podcast. Let's begin by talking about security as a whole and what role security professionals play in the civilian and government sectors. Let's start off with the basic question. What is security and why does it exist? Security is about the protection of people, assets, and life. This also goes for the motto of security professionals of observe and report. Security is a well-needed position as people, places, their assets, and other various things will always need protecting or security. Let's also go over who can do security work. Just about anyone can. Now, it depends on your state laws, but typically, as long as you are over the age of 18 and you don't have any serious felonies or any serious crimes under your belt, you can do security work. It doesn't matter if you're male or female, and some security companies actually will hire you if you have disabilities, depending on how severe your disability is as well. So another question is, why is it worth it? It's worth it for a few different things. The first and foremost thing that stands out to me when doing security work is that you're directly having an impact on the protection and the safety of others. You're directly affecting the safety and well-being of another company, a client, a person, their assets, or all of the above. The pay rates can vary on a very, very wide scale. Now, I don't have a specific number to give you, but I can definitely give you the ballpark, as the number changes based on the company you work for, whether you're doing government work or civilian work in the private side, and a lot more factors that go into play. But the basic pay rate can be anywhere from minimum wage all the way up to $40, $50 an hour. It really depends on the company, the specialty that you're going in, the experience that you're bringing with you, and what the role or mission is of that specific duty. What types of general jobs exist? There is your common jobs, which is going to be protecting people, protecting their life, their assets, protecting facilities, protecting buildings, protecting animals, protecting certain locations. It's basically going to just come down to you are responsible, or you are working with a team responsible for preserving and protecting a specific target or an asset is essentially what it comes down to. Now, there's also roles for security in government positions. And I know you may think, well, you have the military, why wouldn't that cover everything? Well, surprisingly enough, the government does have many positions for security. This can include anything from security details to working with the security forces already on base or the military police. You also have roles that are cash transportation specialists, so they'll be transporting cash from various buildings on base or in government facilities. this can be actually anywhere, from the Pentagon. This can be at any government buildings. This can be the military bases. You name it. Anywhere where there is a professional security company that is willing to step up and prove themselves and meet the qualifications that the government sets, you can do it. So if you can think about it, I guarantee you there is a security position available. You just have to know the right people, work with the right companies, and of course, bring the right experience and skill set to the table. Now, what are the roles for security in the civilian life? Well, there's actually much more jobs available, and this is what typically most security jobs fall under. And that's because there is a lot more leeway when it comes to security as a civilian. The government has very high standards, very specific targets, very specific buildings, very specific way of doing things in general. Whereas on the civilian side, anyone can be a client. It can be an individual, it can be a corporation, it can be a startup business, it can be a birthday party. There's really no limit on who can be a client for security, because everyone needs security for different reasons. So your scope of different jobs and availability is going to be a lot larger in the civilian world than it is going to be the government world. The cons to that, though, is that if you do have a government job, you're typically going to get paid more. You're going to get a lot more experience. You're going to be tasked with a much more difficult security role versus on the civilian side of things, where it may be easier. You may be assigned to protect a client that's basically a store or a restaurant, something like that, something pretty simple. Or it could be something as extensive as, hey, we have celebrities coming into town. You've been tasked with executive protection. You'll be escorting them to and from their vehicles, following them all day long, and then making sure that they get home safely. This can also be protecting very expensive buildings, property, assets, you name it. So you have more freedom on the civilian side, but you have more credibility on the government side. So both are great to work for. I've worked for both. And I encourage you to go out and apply and really look at what do you want to do. It doesn't hurt to do both. And sometimes for specific companies, you can actually do government contracts while working for a private security company and still do a lot of the civilian stuff too. So there's a lot of really great opportunities out there. You just have to find them and do some research. Another really great part about doing security is if you go about it the right way and you work hard, just like any job, you're going to get some really, really great resume bullets, which are really going to help you if you want to further your career and you either want to go into law enforcement, FBI, you want to go into a high tier of security, even if you're going into the military. Starting off with security or building a solid career in security is a fantastic option, because the more you get out there, the more you experience, the more situations that you handle and you get hands-on with, you're going to create some really great bullet points or some really great experiences for your resume that are really going to make you more attractive to companies and contractors. So you have a lot to work with. So in a nutshell here, security is preserving people's lives, assets, and property, as well as the typical model of observe and report. So you are a frontline worker, meaning you're going to be the first person that a situation is going to come down and you're going to be responsible for it. So whether that is somebody trespassing, whether that's somebody breaking in, robbing, whether that is someone who is vandalizing or someone who's on drugs, like I said, security is a very wide scope. And I'm saying that for a reason, because we're going to get into it in just a little bit here about the different roles and jobs you can do. Because again, it's not just about doing the typical security guard stuff that you see on TV or you hear about, in the movies and that kind of stuff. You can do that. You can totally do that. And that's up to you if you want to make that a profession. But I would always recommend going above and beyond and always striving for excellence. There's always something better you can do if you're willing to push yourself. So I highly recommend that. And this is the place where you can find that information. So stay tuned, and we're going to go ahead and cover everything else. So now that we've covered the basis of the security career field, let's go into more depth about what roles and specialist positions you can take, what they do, and where to find them. So in this section, we're going to talk about the specific different roles you can do. Now, as I was mentioning earlier, security as a whole is very broad. There's a lot of variety. So let's start off with one of the things that I really enjoyed during my time working in security was doing executive or dignitary protection. Now, this is a position that is fast-paced. You got to be situationally aware. You have to know a fair amount of tactics if you want to do well. And you really got to be able to manage multiple tasks at once, know where you're at. If you're working with a team, you have to know where your team members are. Maybe you guys are split up. Maybe you guys are all working together with the same client. There's a lot of different things that can go into executive protection. Now, like I said, I really enjoy executive protection because it really gives you a meaningful task right there and then. You have people, a group of people, or just one specific person that you are responsible for, their safety and their well-being. And you have to do your job as efficient as possible without attracting attention. Now, it depends on the company you work for. Some companies, they require you to wear suits and to get dressed up and to follow the VIP or client around, making your presence known, very obvious, very visible, so that way you act as a deterrent. There's jobs like that. There's also executive protection positions in which you work undercover. So you'll be wearing plain clothes. You won't be doing anything that's going to give you away. You're going to blend in with the crowd, stay away from your client, and ensure that they're safe. No one harms them, and no one will attempt to do anything to them. And if they are, you're close enough to step in and to neutralize that threat. So the other one we have here is your typical foot patrol officer. So again, guys, I'm saying this, security as a whole, it is a great career field to get into. Sometimes it can be seen as a starter career field. This is typically what that comes down to as a foot patrol officer. And, it's a good starting place to go. I would not make this a career. This is not something that you can really build skills on and continue to progress and learn more. This is just pretty standard entry level, but it is a really important piece if you are starting into your journey in security. So a foot patrol officer, this is 90% most of the time what people think of when they talk about security. This is for your person who's going to be walking around a building, walking around a restaurant. They're wearing the uniform. They're dealing with angry, drunk customers. They're telling people to leave. They're giving directions to people who are asking if they're out of the state or out of the area. Those are your typical foot patrol officers. Shopping centers, shopping malls, you name it. Those are what those positions consist of. Next, we have on the list cash transportation agents. These are going to be your guys that are working for specific companies like Garda, Loomis. There's some other big name companies up there. But basically, you're driving around. Typically, you carry a firearm on you. You do have to get qualified to carry a firearm. And you'll be going to different bank locations, government locations, anywhere where there's high volumes of money. And you will be solely responsible working with a team of transporting that money from that facility to the drop-off point or to another facility. Sometimes you'll have to be driving around and do multiple rounds, hitting multiple facilities, so you'll have a large sum of money in your vehicle at one time, which is an armored transport. And that from that point, you have to ensure that you have all those funds safely secured, and then you transport them directly to where they need to go. That position, I have a few buddies that do that. It can be very fun. It can be rewarding. It depends on your area, of course. If you're in an area that's pretty quiet, you don't have a lot of crime, you don't have a lot of activity like that going on, it can be a pretty easy job. It pays fairly well. You do get to carry a firearm, so that is a good bullet for your resume, and that's good for skill handling. If you are in an area that is heavily crime infested, or you do have that potential to have a lot of crime, it now turns into a really serious job. You have to take your job very seriously, because at any point you could attempt to be robbed or to have your truck or transport overthrown. The next one we have here is an SRT, or Special Response Team Operator. Now these vary in company to company. They can be called Special Response Team, Emergency Response Team, Special Operations, you name it. There's so many different names because there's so many different companies and groups that have created their own terminology for what essentially is a Special Response Team Operator. And what that consists of is security personnel that have been highly trained in firearms and advanced tactics, room clearing, basic first aid, medical. Sometimes you do have medical operators in the special response team. So you'll have a medical specialist who typically is an EMT or a paramedic assigned. So tactical EMS. These guys are the civilian equivalent to a SWAT team. So they're security professionals. They're just highly trained to handle a lot of various situations. So this can be, for example, if you have a client that is a very high-end client with, let's say, cannabis or a car dealership, or something very expensive. If you're a luxury chain, you can hire a special response team, and you can work as a special response team operator, where you'll get the call and you have to be there, within an hour or less, typically, or as soon as possible, I should say, in which you respond directly to that immediate situation. You handle the threat, neutralize the threat, you work with law enforcement. There's a lot of different opportunities out there, but that's a really great position to be in. When I was creating the special response team operation plan for my current company, there was a lot of different things that have to go into it, because you have to realize that you're not law enforcement, you're not SWAT. So there's a lot of legal hoops and jumps that you have to go through. But once you get through all of those, it can be very fun, rewarding, as long as you have a team that is well trained and you guys have practiced and went over all the specific legal battles that you can and cannot tackle. Special response team operators are a very, very good career, and they're a very good way to work your way up. You learn a lot of skills and you get a lot of experience being on a special response team. So that'll really help you in the long run as far as a career in security. Now, for a vehicle patrol operator, these are going to be typically in a patrol vehicle, and you'll be driving around either multiple client sites or one very large client site. And you'll just be responsible for protecting everything from your vehicle. So you'll be driving around, you'll get out, investigate, make sure this area is good, this section is good. You'll be doing a lot of perimeter sweeps, that kind of thing. So nothing too crazy about vehicle patrols. It pretty much is self-explanatory in the name. So a concierge specialist is someone who checks IDs. They're essentially like a bouncer. They'll go through, just kind of run a quick initial assessment of the person who's coming into the establishment, just making sure that they don't have any firearms or weapons on them, making sure that, they seem like they're coherent and they're there to have a good time. They're not going to cause any problems. They're not going to rob the place or cause a bomb threat, anything like that. Concierge specialist, pretty simple stuff. You can make that a career, although, again, I would say that is in the same realm of a foot patrol officer. It depends on the company you work for. It depends on your location. Sometimes they can be a little bit higher pay. Sometimes they can be a little bit more prestigious, have more responsibilities. But that essentially is what comes down to the concierge specialist. Another position is a CCTV or surveillance operator. Now, these are the positions that you'll be in a control room, or you'll be in some kind of camera room where you'll have access to all the cameras. You'll be watching all the cameras diligently, making sure that you're providing overwatch to the entire facility that you're working at. Now, this can be a very fun and rewarding job, specifically because most of the time you'll typically be working with a dispatch team. If that said, you are the dispatch team as well. So you'll be able to provide a bird's eye view of the entire facility. And again, you'll be working with, or you will also be the dispatchers. So you can also relay that information of what's going on, where it's at, to a ground security team where they can respond right away and handle the situation. So I know that provides a really, really good skill set. I know a lot of security companies really enjoy and really look for someone who has some kind of CCTV or surveillance operator experience, just because of the fact that it shows that you have the situational awareness to check all the cameras. You can multitask. You can look at all the different screens. You can pick up if there's a situation. You can contact, or you can respond as dispatch, get a security foot team out there. It takes a lot. And sometimes, depending on your venue, it can be a very busy and a very crazy task. One of the companies that I used to work for, they had an extremely busy CCTV operation. So the guys who were in there, they were sweating bullets left and right because they were always doing something. It was such a huge facility, such a professional establishment. There was always an issue going on. Someone trying to, rob the place, cause an issue, customers being unhappy, that kind of thing. So that's a great place to start if you can get there. It's also a fantastic place to, if you're on the intermediate chain, you're working your way up. But overall, that's an excellent position I would definitely recommend. Next, we have the cybersecurity technicians. So this is typically going to be done from a computer or some kind of control room as well. You'll be doing a lot of the security functions from your computer. So depending on the company you're working for or the kind of work that you're doing in general, this is going to be a lot of cyber attacks, checking for viruses, Trojans, any kind of malware, people trying to break in to your database or whatever you're working with. And this can be an also very rewarding portion of the security jobs, as you do gain a lot of experience. It's very different from the physical aspect of security, especially if you were to compare it to something like executive protection or a special response team. But you're still getting a lot of really great skills. And again, it does show that you are very competent in computers and databases and operating on a digital platform. So those are many of the common and specialty security jobs that exist, but there's so many more out there. A lot of it really just depends on your state, the need for security, the clients, and of course the company that you wish to work for and their capabilities. So don't get discouraged if the thing that you wanted to do wasn't on this list. This wasn't an exhaustive list. It just means that every state and every situation is going to be completely different. So if there's a very specific thing that you want to do in security, you may have to move to a different state. You may have to move to a different city if you really, really want to do that specific job. But for the most part, what we covered today was a lot of your basic common security jobs that are pretty much in every state and every area, with the exception of a few. So when you're looking to fill one of these positions, make sure that you do your research on the company you're applying for. This means that you're going to go onto their website. If they don't have a website, you probably don't want to work for them, just because it's 2021 and having a website is one of the first signs of being a professional company. So just look for that. If you are applying for a company and it sounds cool, but they don't have a website, they don't have an Instagram, they don't have a Facebook, they don't have any kind of following or testimonials, it's something that you should definitely reconsider. But if you did find a company, you do want to go with them, make sure you do your research. Look at their current staff. If they have bios, read the bios, read your bio about the current, officers or the current leadership who's there. Read about your vice president, your president, the CEO, all that kind of stuff. You really want to do your research, because when it comes time for the interviews, and especially if you're going for a higher paying position, if you're going for an executive or dignitary protection specialist, if you're going for a special response team operator, if you're going for a reconnaissance operator, if you're going for any of these kind of specialty requirements that have a lot of skill and a lot of experience necessary, you want to make sure that you're bringing your research to the table as well. So you want to make sure that you've researched the company you're applying for. You've read about all the current staff who's employed there. You've read about their mission. You know a little bit about some of their clients. Just try to gain as much info as you can, because that's really going to shine in your interview when they start asking you questions, and you can hint at, or you can provide some kind of feedback, letting your interviewer know that, hey, I've read about this. I know about this. Oh yeah, that's right. I do remember reading about this on your website. It'll just show that you're interested in the company and you're really trying to make that push forward as a professional. Another thing to keep in mind is to have a strong and competitive resume. So if you are fresh out of high school or you're fresh out of college and you're trying to apply for a security position and you have no experience, there's a very good chance you're probably going to fall into the foot patrol officer category. Now, that's not a bad thing, but if you don't have any kind of experience or skills to bring to the table, you're not going to be starting off on a high-paying security position with a lot of responsibility. So what I always recommend for anyone who has done military service or has done law enforcement service, or they've retired or anything like that, any volunteer opportunities, you really want to make sure that you create a strong resume. Now, this doesn't necessarily go for just security. This is kind of a general tip for any position you apply for. You always want to make your resume as strong and as relevant to the job you're applying for as possible. So if in this case, in applying for a security position, you want to list on there any tactical experience you have, any military experience you have, any experience you have volunteering for maybe a law enforcement agency or working with law enforcement. Any skills that you've acquired that you can provide a professional license or credential for. So if you've already taken the weapons of mass destruction course, if you have some experience with handcuffing, if you worked with inmates before, anything like that is really going to help out your resume, especially if you have certifications. So if you have taser certifications or pepper spray or baton, if you happen to have a firearms permit right off the bat, that's really going to make you look attractive to a company for employment. Another thing is just to make sure that you dress to impress. During my time with my current company, I have performed numerous interviews, and so many times in the interviews, people come poorly dressed. They'll come dressed in shorts, flip-flops, tank tops, shirts. Sometimes they're kind of holey. Sometimes they have stains on them. Their hair won't be done. Sometimes they'll have, horrible stenches to them. These are all for the applicants. And guys, if you're going to apply for a job, no matter what it is, but especially for security, you really want to make sure that you are dressing appropriately. You have your hair done, you brush your teeth, you're smelling good. Always make sure you dress to impress. So if you're a male, make sure that you wear a full suit and tie. If you're a female, wear some very nice dress clothes. You can wear a nice professional skirt, or you can wear a professional suit as well. Just make sure that you're always dressed to impress. There's nothing worse than maybe you have a lot of really great resume experience. Maybe you can articulate very well, but you don't look the part. So in the eyes of an interviewer, they're not going to want to hire you. And there's been people that I have personally interviewed that they were great on paper. They sounded fantastic. They had a lot of tactical experience, or they had a lot of really good experience working with law enforcement or volunteer work, or, all kinds of things. But in person, outside of looking at the resume, I did not qualify them for the job, because based on their interactions, how they spoke with me and how they were dressed, that was enough right there to show me that they weren't serious. You can do a lot and you can have a lot of things on paper, but it's your overall presence that a lot of employers are looking for. So if you have the total package, if you're completely dressed from head to toe, professional, you've got a good attitude, you're positive, you can articulate well, you've rehearsed maybe some of your interview questions, you've done your research, you've got a good resume, and you legitimately have those skills to prove, I promise you're going to get a very good job and you're going to land yourself in a really rewarding position. Finally on our list is make sure you bring a list of questions regarding pay, hours, company culture. These are really important questions, guys. Make sure that you're really talking to your interviewer, the company you're working for, and ask them. There's nothing wrong with asking them questions. Make sure that you have a very solid and a clear understanding of how much you'll be paid. Talk about, what are the possible promotion opportunities. Talk about your realistic hours. What are you going to be working, and what does the company need you to work? Ask about the company culture. How do the other employees like it there? How, do you like it there? Speaking to the interviewer. Just try to get your questions answered as honestly as possible, and ask a lot of questions, because if you gather in all this information, you've done your research, you've asked the questions, and you've done everything you can possibly do, this will really help you in determining what company you want to work for. Because you want to work for a company that's going to take care of you. You want a company that's going to pay you well, give you some good assignments, be there for you when you need it. And the only way you're going to get to that point is by doing all the legwork, asking the right questions, doing your research, interviewing at multiple companies, seeing what other companies have to offer. That's the only way you're going to find a really good position. And now, listeners, a brief message from our sponsor. Welcome back, folks, to the Dozer Tactical Podcast. In this episode, we went over the various security jobs you can apply for, the roles of most security positions, and how to find the company that is right for you. Now, we're going to be discussing some tactics to be used with you while you're out in the field, some advice for becoming an outstanding security professional, and some other various tips you can only learn from experience. A small disclaimer. These tactics and advice should only be used if you have been professionally trained and have received the proper licensure or credentials. Do not attempt these tactics unless you are trained to do so. The Dozer Tactical Podcast is not liable for any injuries or loss of life due to the techniques discussed in this podcast. So the first thing I want to touch on, and this is great information if you're just starting out or you're an experienced, seasoned security professional, is your duty belt and your equipment. It's always important from time to time to adjust your duty belt to make sure that things fit properly, that you have the correct gear, you have the correct licenses, and just always making sure that you're staying on top of your duty equipment. This is really important because as you progress in security, when you start off, again, typically you'll be doing the foot patrols, but you can work your way up. If you get put onto a special response team, or you do executive protection, or you're working with your local county on inmate, watches or anything like that, working with psychiatric patients, you always want to make sure that you are representing your company in the best way possible. And one of the quickest ways to identify someone who is taking their job seriously, especially in security, is by looking at their gear, looking at their duty belt, looking at their tactical vest, looking at how they look as a whole. So in terms of gear wise, you always want to make sure that your duty gear fits correctly. You want to make sure that it's nice and snug on your waist, but not too tight that it's giving you a muffin top, but not too loose that it's sagging down and falling off you. One thing I always recommend for everyone is to always get an inner belt. So that's where you have a hook and loop system. Your duty belt will actually hook onto the inner belt, which is the loop material, and that'll keep it from sliding around, and it's really easy to take off and on. So that's a recommendation I give to you guys, just so that way it's more professional. It stays on you very securely. It's easy to take off, and there's not, you're not having to mess with the belt keepers, because I've played with the belt keepers for a while, and they're just kind of becoming a nuisance. So I found the inner belt was very, very comfortable and very easy to work with. On the same note of gear, just make sure that all your gear works correctly. Don't ever just keep pepper spray on you and hold the pepper spray for years and years and years, and then when it comes time to finally use it, it's expired, or it's no longer held its charge, or it, for whatever reason, doesn't fire. You want to make sure that all your gear is constantly updated, it's inspected, it's cleaned, just like a firearm. It's really important because when you're out there in the security field, you are exposed to all kinds of threats and dangers. You're exposed to a very wide variety of things, and it's important to make sure that your gear is always functioning properly and that you always have access to it, because if something happens and it goes wrong, which it will, you want to make sure that you're prepared and you can use your tools as necessary. So just make sure from time to time, you maybe spend anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes just looking over your gear, making sure that your duty belt fits you properly, making sure that if there's anything that's fraying or wearing off, you buy a new holster or you buy some new belt clips. Make sure that your pepper spray is not expired. Make sure that that works. Test that out. Make sure your taser has enough battery in it. It has enough charge. Make sure that the laser on that is working. Make sure that the trigger is functioning. Make sure your baton can collapse and it can uncollapse, it can extend and retract. Make sure that it will hold this lock so that when you extend it out and you go to hit something, it doesn't go back in to itself. It doesn't retract. It stays out. Make sure if you have a firearm that your firearm is working properly. Make sure that you know your firearm like the back of your hand. Know how to disassemble your firearm, how to clean your firearm. Know the type of ammo that is allowed by your company or by your state legally. Know how much ammunition you're carrying on you. These are all things that's really important to know that'll help make you stand apart from the rest of the crowd. Along those same lines is generally just staying squared away. You just want to make sure that you are completely squared away. Now this might be the military talking in my background, but staying squared away has its benefits. So what I mean by that term is essentially you're just making sure that you are completely perfect from head to toe. You want to make sure, starting from the bottom up, that your boots, they fit comfortably. You can stand in those boots for long periods of time and they're not going to cause any kind of pain. If they are, it may be time to get some new boots. You want to make sure that your boots are shined, they're looking clean, they're looking nice and polished. If you have a boot that has kind of a gloss to it, you can get some shiner, some shoe shiner, just some polish, and really make those babies stand out, especially if you're wearing black boots or if your company authorizes you to wear black boots. That can look really, really nice if you polish those up. Making sure that your pants are nice and creased, making sure that the appropriate pant is being worn, it's the right size, it's not holey or faded or there's any stains. You want that looking really nice and sharp. If your company has you wear specific socks, just make sure that you're wearing the correct socks. Typically, they're going to be black socks for the most part, what I've always seen in any company. So make sure you're wearing the right socks. When it comes to your shirts, make sure that your shirts are nice and ironed. Everything is looking clean. It's pressed. It smells good. Make sure that there's no stains or holes. Make sure that your belt and your duty belt fit on properly. Again, they're not so tight that they're causing unnecessary rolls to pop out. You don't want to see a muffin top. You don't want them so loose that they're falling off you either. So make sure that your belt is nice and polished. All your gear is polished and it looks presentable. If you do wear a hat or some kind of head covering, make sure that that's clean as well. These little things, guys, I know it may seem like a lot of work, and especially if you're in an environment where you're constantly getting dirty, if you're always out in the dirt, or if you're doing a lot of foot patrols, and I know how that can be. If you're doing that kind of stuff though, guys, just take the extra time, make yourself look good, because that will reflect on your supervisor, that'll reflect on your company, that client will notice that. And believe it or not, people like to nitpick. So if, let's say you're looking sharp and one day you decide that you're going to unblouse your pants, or maybe have your shirt, you're going to take off your shirt for a quick minute because it's hot out, people are going to notice. They'll talk about it. They'll tell your leadership. They'll tell your supervisor. People will do that just because, and you don't ever want that to happen. So just always make sure that you're always looking good, always looking professional, and it'll always work out for you. You can't go wrong always looking good. So the next tip we're going to have here is having integrity and making sure that you're always doing the right thing. So in the realm of security, there's going to be many opportunities for you to do the wrong thing. It really depends on your mission, where you're at, what you're currently doing. But guys, at the end of the day, remember that you are there to provide security, provide protection, provide a report, and just observe everything and do the best job that you can for your company. So just make sure that you're always doing what is right and what is just, and not doing what you want to do because, it's what you think is the best plan of action. You have to follow your company's rules and policies and be there for the people. At the end of the day, it's a job. So do your job. Do your job well. If you are assigned to protect a client, no matter how hectic it may be or how boring it may be, that's your job, is to protect that client, because something will happen at some point and you are going to be responsible for providing protection for them. This is a tip that's going to help advance you in your career. So if you're looking to progress and you're looking to get a really, really solid career out of security, one thing I highly recommend doing, and I recommend doing this as soon as you possibly can, is obtaining all the certifications that you possibly can, as well as any opportunities that are given to you. So when it comes to getting your certifications, right off the bat, as soon as you possibly can, whether afford it or get the training given to you, is get your taser certification, get your baton certification, get your pepper spray certification, get any advanced tactics certifications, get a firearm permit. Do all these things, guys. It really will benefit you in the long run. Depending on your company, you can get a pay raise. This can increase your safety for yourself, because when you're working as a security professional, again, we talked about it, you're going to be exposed to a lot of dangerous situations, and you can be in some pretty dangerous areas. So by getting these certifications, not only is it a professional advancement, but you're now providing yourself the legal and safe options so that you can protect yourself out in the field. Like I said, there's a lot of nasty things that happen out there to security officers, and if you have the certifications and you're trained properly, you're just making it that much easier to save yourself, save your life, or save the life of somebody else. So I recommend to get all your certifications as soon as you can. If there's a new training, if there's a new opportunity that comes up, take it. It's always a good idea, whether it's a refresher or not, to take these opportunities. And because it shows that you take the initiative to always learn. You're always willing to put yourself out there. You're not just becoming complacent and just saying, okay, well, this is the training I have. This is all I need. I'm done. By you taking the steps and taking the initiative to constantly learn more and jump on volunteer opportunities when they're given to you, it really makes you stand out and really shows that you are a dedicated security professional. And that also applies for opportunities such as jobs too. Depending on your company, you may get offered a lot of crazy shifts, a lot of night shifts, a lot of 12-hour shifts, 16-hour shifts, whatever your company policies are. And it may suck, but if you do those and you continue to work hard and you show your leadership and show your supervisors that you're taking all these on and you're really pushing yourself, it can be beneficial for you, because you can be looking at promotions, you can be looking at maybe some of the fun missions. So you can maybe be assigned to a security detail doing executive protection. You can be assisting on a special response team operation. You can be assisting in an inmate watch, things like that. So those are the really fun missions that you do get tasked with, but they only come to those who really work hard and really deserve them. Another few tips is going to be communicating constantly with your leadership and asking for feedback from your supervisors. So again, this is a big one in any position, but specifically here in security, communication is really essential. Talking with your leadership, constantly getting that feedback. If you have questions about anything regarding your current mission, your current post, things you can or cannot carry on you, ask away. I always recommend for everyone to look into the legal aspects of things first. Go onto the California website, go into the BSIS, at least for here in my region. You can go into the BSIS website, and on there you can find every single law that you need to know regarding security, telling you what you can carry, what you can't carry, how to carry it, what actions you can take, what actions you cannot take, and all that information is readily available for you online. If you don't have access to that, or you're in a different state with a different system, reach out to your supervisor or your leadership and ask for the answers to your questions. Always having communication and always making sure that you are letting your supervisors or your leadership know about any issues that come up has always benefited people, and it's never caused any issues. You can never overshare too much information, but if you don't share enough information, that can cause problems. Being situationally aware is an essential component to being a security professional. I know this kind of goes without being said, but you really have to work on your multitasking skills and being able to hear, to see, to smell. You really got to use all your senses and constantly be alert the entire time. It depends, again, on your location, where you're working at. There's been a few locations I've worked at and some work I've done where you are constantly on your toes. You're always having to listen, for noises. You're always having to observe, look around you. And these types of locations and jobs, if they're not with the right person, if you're not paying attention and you're not being situationally aware, you could lose your life. You could lose an asset. You could cause the company or the client you're working for millions of dollars because you're not paying attention. So it's really important to be aware of your surroundings, being aware where you're at, being aware of, exit points. If there's a fire, how are you going to get everyone out of the building as quickly as possible? Because remember, guys, I know that, we have our first responders. Thank God we have our firefighters. We have our police officers. But in the realm of security, typically you are the first line right there and then. Law enforcement, it takes time to get there. It takes 5 minutes, usually on average on a good day, for a speedy response time. The same thing goes for emergency medical services or firefighters. So, with that being said, if there's a situation that goes on right there and then, whether it's a fire or a robbery or a shooting or whatever, you have got to take the initiative and be responsible for those people around you. Whether it's a busy building, whether it's an asset type of deal, whether it's an executive protection type of deal, you're responsible. So you have to make sure that you are taking the necessary precautions and you're doing everything you can to make sure that everyone is safe. And you just have to always stay prepared. You can't ever get complacent. If you're doing the same job for years and years and nothing ever happens, and you choose to be complacent and you choose not to carry your gear with you, or you choose to, overlook certain things, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Because I'm telling you, one day something's going to happen, something bad's going to happen, and you're going to be unprepared and you may lose your life, or someone else may get severely hurt because of that. So just always make sure that you're staying prepared and you're always on top of your things. So again, that's going back to being situationally aware, carrying all your gear, knowing the laws, communicating with your supervisors. If you see something suspicious or something strange going on and you don't know how to handle it, contact a supervisor. All these things that we've already talked about, these are all to help you stay prepared for an active shooter, for an emergency fire, for an earthquake, for a robbery. These are all common things that do happen, unfortunately. And, on this podcast, we're always trying to make sure that you guys are getting tips and information that will help you stay prepared so that you can survive and you can help other people survive and avoid these disasters and make the best of them. You don't ever want to be unprepared and fall victim. Part of this podcast, we try to give you guys, our listeners, the tools and the knowledge and advice so that you aren't just a victim. You can actively play a role in preserving your life or the lives of others. We don't want you guys to fall victim to a shooting incident or a fire, or something happens and you don't know what to do and you freeze up in panic. We want to make sure that you guys are getting proper knowledge and information so that when these situations do arise, that you can handle them properly and that you can walk out of it alive and say, you know what? I was able to do my mission, do my job, and to protect the ones I love, and I'm still here to this day. And that's all we could ever ask for. So that's why we're doing what we do. So guys, that was all the tips and tactics we have for today regarding the security industry. I hope you guys found some of this knowledge useful. If you didn't know a lot of this stuff, please share this with a friend or someone who's in the security industry. Kind of give them an update and pass on the information to them. Because at the end of the day, we just want to see everyone succeed. We want to see everyone who's in security doing a really good job. They're professional, they're on it. We want to see, in a perfect world, everyone getting paid a high amount, because as we continue moving on, there's more and more private security companies that are starting up or becoming present. And the way I'm seeing it, I think private security is going to start assisting law enforcement in a lot of different operations, because the need for protection, the need for security has grown substantially over the past few years. The numerous amount of active shootings, with the numerous amount of robberies, with theft, with vandalism, with break-ins, or just general violence, law enforcement has their hands full. Guys, they are spread so thin, and I very much appreciate all the work that my brothers and sisters do in law enforcement. But I do think that security is making its way, and it is currently, but eventually it'll start creating more of a partnership with law enforcement than just being a separate entity. So that's why I'm giving you guys these tips for today. If you're in security, again, hopefully you learned something today to kind of help spruce you up a little bit and make you more professional, maybe give you a different outlook on being a security professional. And if you're new or starting into security, hopefully this podcast will get you started up on the right foot. So it appears that that's all the time we have for today, listeners. Thanks again for listening to the Dozer Tactical Podcast. Also, please remember to leave us a review and give us a rating on your preferred podcast platform. How about supporting the Dozer Tactical Podcast with a monthly donation? You can do so by selecting the link in the show's description. Thank you again for joining me, and tune in next week for more tactical stories and advice. I'm your host, Dan Mendoza, and remember, listeners, stay safe and stay prepared out there.